Good morning, happy Tuesday. Welcome back to Reaper Pro Tips with me, your host, Anne, and Disembodied Hands Quindy, and John. Apparently Justin is disapparated for a day or two, but that's fine. He'll be back once the ghouls return his bones. Sorry, I was channeling a little bit of macabre there. How is everyone today? Sorry for the lateness. I just was I lost track of time, and then I was like, oh no, so you know how you get that morning. Yes, exactly, right? Ghouls nomming on Justin's bones. I'm sure we'll reconstitute him. I mean, Reaper's got the technology. And you're the Grim Reaper. You can do anything, right? At least as far as dead people go. Hello, everyone. How's it going? Woohoo. Yeah, this Warlock model's very cool. I've wanted to paint him for a while. I had a metal copy that I used for a tutorial on the Patreon a while ago, and he's so heavy, so there was some pitting, and I was just not in the mood to deal with it. Plus, once I've used a model for a demo and partially painted it, I tend to kind of lose the oomph to do more with it unless I'm specifically working on stream. So yeah, I got another one because I saw that he was in Bones Black, and I was like, ooh, I bet he'll be really good in Bones Black. And as far as I can tell, he's really good in Bones Black. He still has, there are mold lines, sure. You can see that I'm going to take off just a little one that I just noticed that I missed when I was doing his prep before. But in general, he was pretty good looking. Not a lot of prep work to worry about on this model. Not just a little bit of mold line here and there, which are really easy to take off on Bones Black with just a knife. Which is what I tend to do, just a really lightweight touch with the knife. Just kind of looking at him, making sure that I've removed all of the bad stuff. Once I get into him, he's complicated enough that I don't want to have to stop and kind of clean him up. But yes, he's our replacement for our half-orc wizard who we finished, who now has a place of honor in our display case here in my home because I really liked how she turned out. Unfortunately, that removes her from easily grabbable range. Hello, Space Toy. So we're starting a new model today. I'm going to get in focus here. I'm also really close, so I'm going to back up. So what we're going to do today is we're going to do this lovely Tiefling's skin tones. Yes, we're going to go very dark with them. Blackish red, I think. It's what I did when I worked on this model before, and I did really like how it came out, so I kind of want to do it on this one, but with a slightly different color setup. So kind of want to show you guys how much fun you can have with using unusual colors for devilish skin. And that's what our subject's going to be today. Sorry, his beard is bugging me. There we go. We'll be fine. Hello, Lost Texan. Well, a lot of new names today saying hi. Hi, everybody. I'm Anne. If you didn't know me, I work for Reaper. I've worked for Reaper for an immensely long time. This coming year, it'll be 19 years. What? 19? Oh my God. Oh my God, I'm almost at my 20-year anniversary. It's crazy talk. We are going to be starting with Ebony Flesh, which is a lovely, lovely skin tone from Bones. And it's one of the skin tones I'm proudest of. I wanted to really be able to hit that African skin tone that's almost bluish. And this is it. So I really, really like it. It's also just a good kind of a shadow for any really reddish or brownish skin tone. So I was running late, Lost Texan, but I have pumpkin spice tea today for the stream. So otherwise that's pretty good. That's pretty good. Also, it's always exciting to start a new model, frankly. So this is Vatanis, Hellborn. Hellborn is, kind of our Tiefling race moniker. Our demon, or half whatever you want to call it. Half satyr, I suppose. They have all sorts of Tieflings now, so really you could use a whole bunch of stuff. I've thought about doing a segment on how to convert just a standard model into a Tiefling by adding horns. Often I find you don't have to add the tail if the model has a lot of cloth or something. You really don't need to add a tail to it. Some people like their Tieflings without tails for that matter. So Masara, thank you, 20-month resub. Diaspero, it's actually different. Walnut, I'd say, is more black. This has unlike Walnut, this has a very heavy load of blue pigment in it, which shifts it very cold. It's a very interesting color. I mean, I would say if you're looking for something kind of the same color, black and brown is close, but you can see how bluish the ebony looks next to it and how much like redder this looks. So, but you can see they're the same shade, meaning they're the same like degree of dark or light. So black and brown, I would say, would be what you could start with. I highly, if you do ever plan to paint dark skin tones though, any African American models or any African models, anybody with that really, really dark skin tone, ebony flesh is your go-to. Like, I try so hard when I'm working on skin tones, when I develop skin tones of ethnicities that are different. I try to be as accurate as I can so that the mini painters out there who are African or African American have a color that to paint somebody who looks like them. I think that's really important to represent. All right, 26 months on Nomad Zeke. Person of alternate planar origin. Yes, that also, you know. So, anyway, yeah, you could use black and brown. It'll give you a slightly different effect. I like the blue in this. I like starting with it because shadows are often bluish or colder. And so, essentially, this is not going to be our main color. It's going to be the color we work everything off of. And we're going to use some very interesting colors to work it up with. Colors that are not skin colors. So, because today, we're just going to have fun. Let's see here. The BCA pink. Yeah, I haven't gotten around to putting an order in. If it's a bubblegum pink, then what it's going to be very good for is highlighting reds. If the reds are warmer, especially. If you don't want to go up with orange and yellow because you feel like that doesn't fit what you're trying to do, then I would say that that's probably a good color to mix into your brightest red and go up from there. And good morning, Daffodware. All right, let us get some paint on this mini. Let's see. I do not have a block. Where is my block? Keep a bunch of blocks over here. Don't like to ever hold the mini by itself, so we can use our little orange blob, or we could use our gianter blue block. The giant blue block might actually be a good one. Using a bigger block than you think you need is actually nice, because then you can actually lay the block down. It's heavy enough to hold the model like this. It holds it off the ground. When you use the tiny blocks, they're nice for my smaller hands, but then they tend to tilt because they don't have enough weight on the block side, especially with a bigger model. So I think let's, as always, limber up our stuff. You can see how the goo has made a spot on the wooden block. But these are so inexpensive, these wood blocks, and of course they're infinitely reusable, so it doesn't so much matter. Quindy. So yeah, we're going to do this. Oh, I just noticed a mold line on the tips of his fingers. How insidious. I'll have to remedy that. So if you stop and like just knead up your blue tack, your poster putty, it's going to be stickier, just like silly putty. Just like when you used silly putty as a kid or something like that, or modeling clay. Kneading it makes it more sticky, and then you can splurk your model right down into there, and it'll hold it very nicely. We'll adhere it. If you really have a heavy model, you can do what I used to do, which is to kind of squish the putty up onto the base like this. Squish. So you can see how the putty just kind of rises up onto the base edge. That kind of acts as an additional contact point to hold the model in, though it does prevent you from painting the base as easily, the rim as easily when you get to that step, but then you can always take it off and re-stick it on. So not a big deal breaker in my opinion. So we'll use the big block for Vatanis. And you see, it's nice and heavy, so because he's a light plastic model, it's holding him entirely off. It also holds him at a nice angle for you guys to see, so the block is really nice that way for me. And yeah, let's take that mold line off those fingertips, because I'm going to be painting those, base coating those today. So if you see it, here, it can be difficult. See that little mold line on the fingertips? Yeah. So you've got to be really delicate when you're doing this. I do prefer a knife for this on Bones Black and Bones USA. because I feel I can slice off a very small amount. I can shave off that line. Sometimes you want to go at it from the other direction, just to get that little thread of plastic off of there. And just kind of trim it up. Use your fingernails to pull off any excess little threads that are being stubborn. And just kind of eyeball it, see what else you might need to do. If you still have a little clingy thread, you got to come back in and get that off. Kind of scrape it. There we go. So you can see the lighter color where the plastic was scraped, but otherwise he's in pretty good shape. Fingertips can be weird on 28mm models. Sometimes they don't fill. Sometimes you've got that really pesky mold line right there at delicate parts, which are hard to get. And the best I can do is say, don't use a super sharp knife because you can totally take those fingertips off with minimal pressure. So use a decent knife, but not one that's like super straight out of the box. Actually, I never use a knife that's straight out of the box if I can help it. I'll break it in and then I'll use it for miniatures because I don't want to gouge out details on the model. It's all too easy to do. Yeah, this is a very busy model. So exactly, Bull. So because it's a busy model, it will be an interesting one because there's a lot of little things that we need to paint. Sometimes that can be pesky. Okay, often it is pesky. It can really annoy you as a painter that there's so many things you have to think about. What color are we going to make this? What color am I going to make that? So that's why this is a good subject for the stream and why I've thought about doing it for a while. Because it is sometimes difficult. There's a little mold line there that I missed. Just want to get all these off so that we don't have to stop in the middle of the thing and take paint off of something to correct them. I almost always will use a hobby knife as opposed to a file when dealing with these. Bones USA you can file. They're a little bit more, a little less soft, a little less plasticky. Here it's a little bit, it can be a little difficult, but just do your best to kind of try to take the line off and to clean up any little threads of plastic that you see. I'm going to grab a file real quick and see if I can actually buff off just a tiny bit of this. Sometimes it does help. When you want to soften an edge that's had a mold line on it, or take off some extra threads, using a diamond file, a really small one like this, can help you get at those areas without leaving a lot of texture. The problem with files on goopy plastic like PVC is that they tend to leave a discernible fuzzy texture, which can be very annoying. So this is a finer diamond file. And I find that sometimes those are helpful in this kind of situation. They don't leave too bad of a texture. Hey, hi, Coops. Oh, dear. Good luck, Cornico. All right, I think we're good. Once again, I'm going to get in with a little file if I see a little bit still hanging off from something I tackled before. And if I get a little bit caught, I come in with my knife, kind of scoop it out. Every once in a while, I like to talk about prep work on these models, just because a lot of new painters won't do it. But it doesn't take much time. And if you do end up putting a paint job you really like on the model, there's nothing more really annoying to you afterwards than noticing a mold line you just let go. And on this model that you feel like you did a really good job on for you. So get into the habit of just at least tackling the major ones. And with a knife and a file, you're pretty good. Yeah, it should work. Dark Magician, it should work. I feel like the dark skin triad is like, I did that, remember, like, oh gosh, 15, more than 15 years ago. I feel like Ebony Flesh and Ruddy Flesh together, the Bones triad, is a little bit better, but dark skin is a little redder. So it depends on what kind of dark skin you're reaching for. I find that for an authentic dark skin, these guys are your best, the Ruddy Flesh with the Ebony Flesh. But if you want more of a reddish tone, less of a golden tone in the highlights, then dark skin is a good color to use. Play around and see it. You should deal with it. I feel like the dark skin triad is okay. It was based strongly on some other companies' dark skin colors at the time, but I feel like we've done better. So, but again, it depends. If you want a very reddish dark skin, then maybe you go that way. So, it all depends on what your goal is. It always depends on what your goal is. I need to remember to drink my pumpkin spice tea while it is still warm, or I will be a sad Ann. All right, let's base coat. So he's got just a little bit of skin showing in some places. I feel like this is, though, I'm going to actually hit this first, even though it's out of the beaten path, but I feel like this is actually skin. So I want to mark it right away. Sometimes when you've got a model where you're not sure what's skin, what's not skin, painting the skin first is a good tactic. And often people will paint the skin first because they do a technique called painting from the inside out, which means they are painting the thing, you know, they paint the things, the skin and the things closest to them first. And they work outward from there. There we go. Sorry, I just spotted another little mold line. Just going to tackle it real quick. The mold lines on this model are insidious and many. There are little tiny bits that I miss and then I see. But I want this guy to be good, so there we go. But yeah, so that's one tactic, is painting the skin first and then painting the things that are next to the skin and then continuing to work outward. So that can be a good tactic. And see that mold line there? Yeah. The other way that people tend to choose their first color or the first thing to paint on a miniature is to assess what color is going to be all over the miniature, like what takes up the most room. So if there is something, like you're painting a wizard and he's just got a ton of robe, and most of that robe is the same color, at least the same base color, then it sometimes makes sense to start with that. You can combine those techniques, by the way. Obviously, if you're painting an orc, which is mostly skin, then starting with the orc skin makes sense from both of those perspectives. And that's true of many humanoids. If you have goblins or kobolds or, you know, monsters that are really showing, like, just wearing piecemeal armor, like our ogre, right? So the color that is over most of the model and also is the skin tone. So it makes sense to start with that because you know it's going to be all over the place. And since it's going to be all over the place, it's a color you have to, like, keep in mind as you build your color scheme. So it makes sense then to block that in. And even if it's not the skin and you do start with the skin, your second color probably wants to be the one that takes up the most space. Now I'm going to go over his entire, like, everything, even the horns and the eyes and everything with this dark color to start with, because I just want to get everything set. And I know I can pick up the beard and the hair and everything later, but I want to block this in. And when you want to paint faster, this is something you can do. So instead of stopping and painting the horns separate, the hair separate, you know, the beard separate, having to essentially move slower on your base coat because you're painting around all those items and then putting a separate color on them, you can just paint everything, your main color, in this case, the unifying color, the skin tone, and then go back later to touch things up. One second. I continue to see tiny little mold lines. Like super tiny. Like the mold lines are really actually really well placed on this model because they're so tiny. I'm not even seeing them until I'm right on top of them. That's actually kind of the feature of a good model. Like you never really want to see that mold line staring at you going down the front of the face or the body if you can help it. So there we go. So the fact that the mold lines in this model are actually just kind of pouncing me at the last minute is a sign that they were well placed. And otherwise wouldn't be obvious. In the old days, a model like this looking to the side would almost always have a mold line going down just the front of the face. And sometimes you'll even see it on poorly designed moldings. But in general, the fact that they run it down the ear on this side instead and do a buildup is, is technology that wasn't always around as far as the way of thinking. I think there's a catch there. There's a lot of little details here. Like the little catch goes into a chain, I think, that goes around his neck to hold the cape on. So keep those things in mind as you are working your way around. Try not to paint over them because unlike with the facial details, things like this tiny chain that is holding his cloak on. Can you see it? Yeah, there. Those things are easy to lose track of, right? So if you accidentally paint that over, like you'll remember to paint the eyes and the horns and the hair, but you may not remember that you kind of painted over this little connector that holds his cape on this side. So, and it may not matter to you if you're just painting him quick for a game, but if you're trying to do a good job on him for your friend or because you really like, because he's your main villain or whatever, try to remember those details. If in your life you ever strive to be better at mini painting, kind of getting those habits in hand early will serve you well. Oh, it's just ebony flesh, Coofs. It's not like you can't ask. Like, oh no, I missed a color. Hey, Anne, what was the color? For those who missed the beginning, it's ebony flesh because ebony flesh is awesome. And whenever you can use it to start a super dark skin color, you should. That's just my opinion. You can ignore me at your peril. It's just one of my favorite children, that's all. All right, and then the hand down here. He doesn't really have much skin showing, as you can see. It's all up top and then this little hand. Now this is going to make trouble for us. This is a challenge here because with so little skin, it can be, and making that skin dark, it can be hard to make that stand out. So we're going to be fighting with that. Although I have a plan. Usually when you paint your model, you want to put lighter, brighter colors up top. And so when you're doing a fair skin tone, then that's easy, right? You automatically get people to look up because there's something light up top. When you do a dark skin tone, it's more of a challenge to bring the attention up to the face of the model. But I'm planning to highlight his skin very inventively, so one place I am going to be careful about here is all these little details. I think that's about right. So that's cloth, this is cloth, but I think that's skin underneath this catch, this amulet. That's what's holding all this on that side. All right, sweet. So what we're going to do is, because he is a Hellborn, we are going to bring up his skin with reddish browns and oranges, as if it's fiery. Oh, the 18th quarterly contest. We were blustery yesterday, day before. We had a very windy day. I think Sunday was a very windy day. Wow, Reaper John. Look at you. You should certainly, aren't you behind? I hate to say this, but aren't there people out there with 28 months? And you're Reaper John. Just giving you crap. Yes, the 26-month club. I guess you do have, like, you know, like a sword in it. Well, you're a moderator, obviously, but I don't know. The people who were like the first subscribers, I don't remember how long they've been subscribing. If it's only 26 or if it's more like 28, I've lost track. Sorry, a little bit of mold line, little bit of mold line. We keep this. We keep singing this song, right? So there's another mold line. All right, cool. So there we are. So that's a very dark skin tone. You can see how dark that is. It's a very rich color, though. It looks really cool. I always like it. So we're gonna go. It's time for us to go off the rails, folks. No more skin tones. We're gonna start with auburn shadow. But isn't that a hair color, you say? Yes! Yes, it is. It is a hair color. We're going to use it anyway. I was just looking at colors this morning, and I was like, yeah, let's do that. Looks like a good red-brown to me. And this is where I always kind of shake my head, and it will benefit you to get out of this thinking and look at colors like they're just colors. But we used to get comments, like Ed always said all the time, like people who painted historical models, they wouldn't buy like a tannish, greenish color unless it said it was Dunkelgelb. Like they wouldn't, you know, they wouldn't be able to just say, hey, I need kind of a tan with a bit of gray in it, you know. They instead relied heavily on the actual name of the color. And fantasy painters do that too, although maybe not to quite that extent, right? We're maybe a little bit better about it. Maybe because we don't often have a paint that's named exactly for the thing, but a lot of us still depend on a color being called leather brown. And to be honest, the manufacturers play to that. They will name a color that they want to, you know, to make it more popular. They will give it a name that they feel is more accessible. Nope, that was what we used before, Coos. Why would I, like, you know, want to repeat myself? I painted this part of this dark skin tone on this model before, but I used different colors. So if you want to see what I used the first time, you could go to my Patreon and look for painting dark skin on Tieflings, or dark demonic skin, I think is what I called it. So I did put a brush full of the ebony flesh into this auburn to knock it down just a little bit because, as you know, when I'm building custom series of colors or custom triads, I always put a little bit of the previous color into the new color. It usually doesn't shift the new color very much at all, and it helps the two colors go together. You can use this technique to highlight greens with pinks or anything your little heart desires. It will work. The weird transition colors may be not what you're looking for. So sometimes, you know, that just is an unforeseen outcome. But you can actually highlight any color with any other color smoothly by doing that. It just might look odd. All right, so remember when we're dealing with muscle masses, especially, but really anything, look at what the surface area is. What shape is it? This pectoral is kind of oval. So when we put this highlight on it, we want the shape of that highlight area to also be oval. We want it to be rounded. So I'm leaving a semicircle of dark at the bottom there. And here also on the bicep, this is also an oval. So we want our highlight to be oval. We're only going to leave a little bit of our super dark shadow. And we're going to cover about 75% of the surface with this reddish color, this auburn shadow. This normally a hair color, but we're using it for skin color today for giggles color. Around this upper part. Oh, I see a bit of plastic that got stuck in the base. This happens when you've been cleaning off your mold lines. Sometimes you do find a little shred of plastic that gets caught in the paint. And then you just want to, with bones it's so easy, you just shave it off and put a new base coat down. Now I'll put a couple of coats if you want. David's a big turquoise and teal fan, Crows, but he likes to match it with orange and red. So he always jokes red and turquoise are his colors. Whenever I see him painting a model red and turquoise, I poke at him. But I do the same with purple and gold. Although I haven't for a while on the stream. We haven't done purple and gold for a while. Yeah, redstone used to be my go-to. Before it was canceled, the redstone colors were absolutely my go-to for painting Tiefling and Hellborn type flesh. Absolutely. Also succubi, since they're half demon. So most of this upper area is going to get this highlight color. Since it's facing the light, once it drops and goes down the back, though, this muscle will get the more of a rounded highlight. So it's kind of shaped like a smile. Like the edge of the highlight is shaped like a smile. So that's what I mean by rounded highlight. Doing this, making sure the shape of your highlights are in line with the kind of area you're highlighting, helps you create the feeling of volume so that the muscles feel like they're actually like bulging out instead of just kind of flat. And you want that. When you've got a model with huge bulgy muscles, you usually want those huge bulgy muscles to stand out. So now here on this little linear muscle down here, you can just do a slight highlight. Just a line. If it's a line area, especially on a 28, because you don't have a lot of room on a 28 millimeter. So don't overthink the tiny areas, just get a highlight on there. And why does what Karuniko just described work? It works because there's a magical pigment interaction that happens when you mix magenta pigment with phthalo green. It turns blue. Purple plus green is blue. Who knew? So that's why you can take a teal or a turquoise and mix it with a purple and get a blue. It depends now a little bit on the pigments that go into that purple, though, because if it's using a large percentage of non-magenta red, then you're gonna it'll change what you get. This one is a IPEVO Twisted Oma, IPEVO, and it is, I think, the VZX, but there are a couple different models. Some of them are wireless, some of them are not. I always keep mine plugged in. I got the wireless one, but I don't really need the wireless functionality. So anyway, it's it varies. Like that's what they used at ReaperCon. They used a slightly older version than what I have. But I think that word has traveled and that these are really the best thing to use for the kind of streaming we do. I totally take credit for that, by the way, guys, because I researched and bought this camera after Justin had his old original one, and I showed it to him, and then next, this ReaperCon Reaper had a ton of them. So I totally take cred for discovering this for the miniature painting community. Totally! But they're really good. But please pay attention to your backdrop. Like, so many of the problems, another mold line, but I'll expound upon backdrops while I do this. So many of the problems that people have with camera setups are due to backdrop. Because the color of the backdrop, no matter how good the camera, the color of the backdrop is going to change the look of the model. Here, let us experiment. Drop all the white out. We've got a pretty good look at it. Put a bunch of white in. Suddenly the model is way dark. Even if I put it up against the gray, it's still dark. In fact, it's even darker because I've covered up the white here, see? So when you are looking for backdrops, choose a medium color. I always use a gray, actually. At this point, I carry around my pack of gray construction paper. I brought some sheets to ReaperCon. It really helped how the camera picked up the model. You want a neutral background. You can experiment with different colors. Sometimes the camera will shift a little bit in response. Like if you use something very blue, it may shift your model a bit warmer. If you're using something brown, it may shift your model a little more blue. So when we're doing things like with normal documents, that doesn't matter, right? So the DocCam people didn't really have to worry about that for the intended usage. But because we use it and we're depending on color, accurate color representation, be sure to use something like this. I just buy a pack of medium gray construction paper and I'm good to go for ages. When I get a bit of like paint on it or the edges start to curl up, I just switch it out for a fresh sheet. It's like having a fresh palette to work with. But yeah, so cannot overstate the value of getting your lighting right and having a backdrop. Just take a model, put it up against whatever backdrops you have, and kind of find the one that makes the model look accurate, that makes your skin tone look accurate. Sorry, I gouged myself last night. That makes everything you can see. Look at it with your eyes and then look at it on the camera. And right now, I can tell you that this is my exact skin tone. This is my exact wood color. It looks absolutely 100% perfect on my monitor. Now, your monitor may be slightly different. Everybody's monitors are different, but we can't adjust for that. But we can adjust for what we directly see when we're setting up a camera like this. Yeah, I use it to double check. I find that photographs are even better, but of course, then you have to take the photograph, double check, and then adjust. There. It's a little better. Let's get this hand figured out. He has defined sections to his hand, so you can actually see where the knuckles are, which is really nice sculpting on Bobby Jackson's part. I think this is really one of my favorite newer Bobby sculpts. Just the attention to detail on it. Really love it. And then the part of the hand that leads up into the fingers right there. So you've got that crease going down the front of the hand also. That'll become more evident as we paint. Obviously, we're working with very dark colors still here, so it's hard to see the details. But as we continue, yeah, he does have a good face. And that's just his arm is really good. The hand is really good. But yeah, so as we continue highlighting all of these little details, our challenge is to bring all these out so that the viewer can notice them. Yeah, it works, and you could totally, I believe this has an HDMI, so you could put it up on a TV. The downside is that then sometimes you overcorrect. Because the details that you can see, remember, when you blow up your work, the details that you can see are probably not seeable by even somebody with good eyesight. So you kind of have to double check yourself a little bit. If you have a family member, because I once used, I learned this when using an Optivisor, and it's actually why I don't use an Optivisor. I used a 10 times magnification Optivisor to do eyes, and I was really happy that I'd gotten a little hint of blue for the iris, and this is on a 28mm model, and a tiny little spot highlight. Then, when I took off the visor and just looked at it, and keep in mind my eyes were normal at that time, I did not need reading glasses, I couldn't see any of that. You can only see it under magnification. So that's when I stopped using extreme magnification. I told myself I wouldn't ever go beyond 5 times, and 10 times was right out. So beware. Like sometimes, yeah, if it helps correct your vision to the point where you can actually see, like if you're going blind and it really does help you approximate normal vision, fantastic. But when you have like, you know, just slightly off vision and it's just helping you get closer to the model, you can really get yourself into like spending all this time on tiny details. And then when you look at the model, even look at the model right here, it doesn't show up unless you really look for it. So don't, aw, bummer. Bummer, Shadow Raven. Yeah, there's a lot of it now, Bull. Like, I'm almost to my 3-year mark at this point. But it is, if you're on the Discord, go and look at that. We have a Patreon directory channel. And that will actually give you the subjects of everything I've ever done, because Margaret has been awesome and she's put that in there. So that will help you, because then you can kind of skim the topics and say, oh, that one sounds interesting. And usually I use search terms, so you can look for painting black and you'll be able to find the video you're looking for pretty easily. I try to use very intuitive search terms. So hopefully that helps you out a bit, because I know it gets to be a lot, right? Like 3 years is a lot of content for me, because I do 4 pieces of content minimum every month. So yeah, the directory really helps. Alrighty, let's get that face figured out. Let's see here. Yeah, okay. Now, facial hair is challenging because, of course, it covers up a lot of the features. He has a big snarl on his face, which is awesome. He has a mustache. We may go lighter with his hair. That would be one of our possible solutions. We may go fiery with it. I'm thinking still. So the cheekbones are going to show up with a beard. The nose is going to show up. Got a big snarly face on. You guys see his snarly face. Snarly. Yeah. He's definitely like very unhappy with someone. Someone is about to get a face full of like chaos lightning or something. And then the eyebrows have actual eyebrows sculpted on them. So that means we have to hit the forehead. Now we're down. Okay, so there's when you're frowning, and this is where studying face anatomy comes in handy when you're mini painting. When you're frowning and your brows draw together, you have a forehead bunching muscle here, and then you've got this little muscle in the middle, and then you've got another muscle on the other side. So technically you should hit 3 different areas up there. And with 28 millimeter, it's really easy to like have things flow together like my paint just did. So I'm going to go back in with my ebony flesh and kind of make a little V in the center there so that I can keep those things separated, because it's a key part of his expression. That's the great thing about this model, is there are such fine details on it. Like you could really go in and hit some real subtlety and really bring out his expression. And as we progress on this model, you'll see that expression. Ideally, you'll see it come out more and more. So he really doesn't have an upper lip. He's got a mustache instead. So we don't have to hit an upper lip. And his upper actual lips, since he's doing this, you see how you lose this? You lose the upper lip when you've got a snarl. You draw it in, and then your mouth drops open and down, and this lip stands out. So we do want to hit that lower lip with the skin color. And I can see a little bit of the edges of the mouth around there too. And it's nice that everything is dark so far, because it means if I am a little messy hitting this lower lip, it really doesn't matter. You can see it now, though. But yeah, I'm going back and forth between like a blue-black or blue-purple hair, or going fire with it. Gotta remember his ears. And those will connect right up here. There's a little bit of sideburn action going on. But I'm going to block over it for now and go back and fill it in later. So we got our ear. And you can see I'm starting very close to my base color. And you want to do that because you want everything to like kind of blend out from there. And to get that blending, you need transitions. that are close to each other. So we'll start here, and then the next time we go up, it'll be more striking. There we go. And I also haven't decided on a color for horns, so that is another question. It's also another opportunity to put a lighter color up top if we decide to go light bone color with the horns. But going bone colored with the horns would be a good ploy because we already know we have bones down here. We have a spine and a demonic skull mounted down here. So we already know we've got bone as a component on this model. And so if we want to kind of pull the eye up from there and kind of make it look all around the model, because that's going to be very light, we would make the horns lighter. So that's probably a solution that I would employ. And if the horns are lighter, then the hair may go darker, or it could still go fiery. I need to not forget the side of the neck here. And I see another mold line. Haha. Trash, I try to avoid painting models more than once. This is an exception because I wanted to paint this model. I painted the skin for a tutorial, and then I felt like I couldn't paint the rest of that particular model because of the heat pitting I didn't want to fix on the metal. There was just it was the metal version, and there were some issues with the model I had, but I wanted to use it for that tutorial, so I used it anyway because the face didn't have issues. This is a very difficult place to get the mold line off. So we're going to kind of go back and forth on it. But there is only one model that I have professionally painted twice. And that would be the 54mm Daenerys sculpt for Dark Sword. The one where she is naked and coming out of the fires of her husband's funeral pyre with the 3 baby dragons. Marika painted the 28mm version. I painted the 54mm version for Jim. After I painted that, he showed it to George R.R. Martin, and that is what prompted George R.R. Martin to ask me to paint some stuff for him. So that was the model that let me meet Gurm. But that's the only time that I've agreed to paint a model to a professional level twice. Because otherwise, I do it the first time, I usually mean it. Like, I do the stuff to it that I want to do. I'm going to see if that was adequate for that mold line. So doing it, I have no inspiration to do another version. Like, it's hard enough for me. Like, I typically don't... If I look at a box art and I love the paint job on it, I lose impulse to paint that model. Because if they've already done what I would have done to it, I feel like I'm not going to bring anything new to it. Whereas if I look at a box art and I don't like their color scheme, or I feel I could do better, then I'm very inspired to paint the model. And that's true of my own models, right? If I painted something, I probably pretty much, I do to it what I would want to do to it. And so from that point on, unless I have this sudden inspiration for painting it completely differently. But that hasn't happened ever. I mean, I've gotten inspirations like that, but then I stop myself. And it's kind of tied to the same advice I give you guys. A model can only teach you so much. Any one model can only teach you so much. And chances are, the first time you paint it, you've learned from it. And so painting it again probably isn't going to teach you much. It might teach you something if you do like a really much more difficult color scheme or you try freehand. But could you do this on a different model maybe and learn even more? Probably. Oh, bummer. No crow's nest. But yeah, otherwise I learned this early on in my eBay career because often I would put up, I mostly enjoyed selling models just that I painted because I wanted to paint them. And I would get people who would ask me if I would do a duplicate. And I learned very quickly that I just didn't have the urge to paint it the second time. Like when I really, really looked at it, I tried it once. I did it once. And then I was like, no. So then it became one of my no's that I just wasn't into. They could always like pay somebody else to duplicate my paint job, so I didn't feel too bad saying no. Gonna do another layer back here just to accentuate, make sure I picked up everything. Gotta do the back of the neck, don't want to forget that. There's all sorts of little bits of skin to highlight here. And once we get the first highlight on it, then that becomes a trigger for me to come in. Like, then I won't have to like remind myself, oh yeah, there's the back of the neck. Because as I move on with my next color, I'm gonna be like, oh, there's the reddish brown. I just put my new highlight everywhere the reddish brown is. You're just gonna have to replay an old episode, Shadow Raven. That's the great thing. Oh, thank you, VCR. I love you too. Thanks for the Prime sub. 15 months. Awesome. Working toward that double subiversary. Again, with these little tendons and stuff, just a little bit of highlight. You do want to put a little bit of highlight on the bottom of the arm. There will still be light reflecting at that surface. You will still be able to see color. A little bit of highlight here. Alrighty, and make sure I've got a little bit of highlight color there. This is all good. Back of the hand. So we've got a bone there. Yeah, this is a very well, the anatomy on this one is very well sculpted. I think Bobby had fun with this one. But yeah, that does result in me, that whole not wanting to paint a model twice, does result in me thinking extra hard before I start one. Like, and really, really thinking about color scheme and what I want to do and kind of getting excited about it. Like, I need to find a color scheme that I can get excited about. That feels like awesome to me. Boom. Missed a couple little spots, so I touched those up. There we go, a nice reddish dark skin tone. I'm gonna hit the hand a little bit more on this side because it's the smaller areas. Building up that highlight a little bit heavier would be good. The smaller the area, the less the color will show up, will stand out to the eye. So if you are building highlights in smaller areas, you've got this big broad area, and then you've got these little areas. Putting an extra dab or an extra layer of the highlight on there to make sure that it's real solid and that it reads is a good idea. There. And then this muscle comes in here too. There we go. Oh, we got it. Sweet. Next color. Look at how it's coming out already, though. That's a pretty cool skin tone already. Like, a lot of people would say, okay, I like it. Stop there. Hey, Trouble. Oh, Polly, this is a Bobby Jackson sculpt. Here. He's Vatanis, Hellborn Warlock by Bobby Jackson. One of Bobby's, I was saying, this is one of my more favorite recent Bobby Jackson sculpts. Oh, I forgot the fingers down here. Oh, noes. Let's get those quick. Then we'll do our next highlight, which also is totally not a skin tone. The next highlight is going to be Phoenix Red, a color I've never used on stream before. So let's get the knuckles here. You always want to pick out your knuckles. Your knuckles should always get a highlight because they stand out on the hand. On a fair skin tone, the knuckles will usually have some red in them. Do make sure you apply your first level of highlight to even areas that are curling underneath or are on the bottom of something. But moving forward, we're going to very much limit the amount of highlight or totally stop highlighting the underside areas. And we're going to focus on the top. Yes, I've been painting a lot of Julie Guthrie on here recently, so I thought I'd do some Bobby Jackson. Although actually our ogre is also a Bobby Jackson. But we have, and then I think Lizette is also a Bobby Jackson. I seem to be, but then I've got a Christine Van Patten with the Mushroom Queen, so, and I want to sub in a Kid Adventurer somewhere also. Oh, sorry. Huh. Oh, yeah. Yes, the Void Blue Spectre Glow and Lemon Yellow. Yes, you could totally Hawaiian shirt with that. It's a little difficult. You would have to snip off the skull to do the Shadow Raven, to do a polearm, I think. Unless you extended the polearm off the back, but then the balance feels wrong. But if you put a halberd blade down here, maybe put something else on the back, yeah, you could do it. It's just that the rest of it is sculpted right up against this. It's not a separate piece. It's all like sculpted right into the cloth. So you kind of have to keep everything here except the skull kind of comes out, so you could get rid of that. So I would say moderate conversion to get a very convincing and good looking conversion, depending on if you just wanted something that suited, that managed to kind of be that, or if you're just doing it for WYSIWYG, or if you actually wanted to look like it really was part of the model all along. Yeah, I don't know. I think I would just put a blade or some sort of balancing detail on the end here and put a halberd blade up top. I think that you could extend this another 5 millimeters by building off of this little area, just with putty really, and then put a halberd blade on the front that just goes in the same kind of curve as this cloth and anchor it back there as well as to the bones, and you'd actually be great. So it is totally doable. It's just a little bit of work, but it would look really cool. Alrighty, let's get our Phoenix Red on. So the colors that we have used thus far, as mentioned, only the starting one is actually a skin tone. Let me talk about that. Doom, doom. We started with Ebony Flesh, which is the very, very dark base that we did. Then we went to Auburn Shadow, and now we're going to Phoenix Red. So we shall see how that works. Now I am dubious about the Phoenix Red, and I'm going to actually give it a try and see if we are going to like it. Originally, I thought about taking Auburn up just with Cavalier Orange, and that would work absolutely. But I thought I would give the red a shot and see, because it's very orangey red. And if it goes too red on me, if I decide I don't like the way these transition, I will just toss the Phoenix Red and go up with Cavalier Orange. But a Cavalier Orange, by the way, is another excellent Pathfinder color. And if you wonder how Cavalier Orange fits into things, it is a little bit darker than Sunrise. Makes a good starter and then highlight with Sunrise. So that is how that fits into your potential painting. And I will talk about those colors in my new Orange Pentads PDF, which is going to be coming up. Yesterday I ran out of time and I didn't quite finish my $2 PDF for the Patreon. So I will be working to get that up for you today. That's the bone one. Talks a lot about different colors for different types of bone, because bone can look different depending on the environment that it's been in. And then we will get going on the Orange Pentads after that. Life happens. He's a good model. He's got a great expression, just like Julie said. I'm going to put a little bit of thinner in this because Oranges and reds and yellows can be deceptive. You think this has no coverage, so when I blend with it, it's going to be super easy. And then you try to blend with it and you're like, whoa, why am I not getting smooth transitions? It's just a very persnickety, they're very persnickety colors that way. So what do, guys? I mix a little bit of my previous color into my current color. It's going to change it a lot because Phoenix, being made of orange and red, which are very, generally low strength pigments, I want to say. And that's an okay color, but I feel like I want a little bit more red. Boom. There. Let's see how that looks. That'll strengthen it a bit. There we are. It's a little more solid. So now the question is, does this make a good triad? And the answer is, yes, it does. Makes a pretty decent triad, don't you think? And that's the eyeball test you want to kind of look at. It's like, does this make sense as a highlight for that? And the answer, since I mixed in a little bit of this, is it makes a lot better sense than it did. So we will try it on the pectoral and see. I'm going to see if I like it. If I do, then we are going to be working with that. I do try to throw new colors in every once in a while. Like every painter, I get into ruts where I use certain colors a lot. And I think every good painter is going to have kind of anchor colors that they use, that they really depend on in their painting. And there's nothing wrong with that. All right, so now let's get closer. All right, so our question here is, how red do we want the skin tone to be and how dark do we want it to stay? So if we want our skin tone to stay very convincingly dark, now look at the pectoral because I've put one layer of this Phoenix red on there. And see how much lighter it looks than the rest of the model right now. So I covered about half the surface with that Phoenix red, and that's going to make the entire skin tone shift lighter. It's still going to be a dark skin tone at core because we started dark with it, and it's going to have that tone no matter what we do. We'd have to paint over the whole thing with multiple coats to get it to look like a medium or lighter skin tone. Oh dear, Shadow Raven. That reminds me, I met one of the guys who used to work with Harryhausen and a guy who did some of the original artwork for the old modules, old D&D modules, at an art show here in the Bay Area a few weeks back. Before we went on vacation, we went, they had an open studios, so we drove around for a bit looking at different stuff, and I walked into this guy's office, and I'm like, oh my god, your stuff looks like the first edition D&D stuff, like the old, like it was better than that, but you could see the style. And he's like, yeah, I used to do that work. I published stuff in like the first expert set or whatever it was. And it's like, oh God, was pretty cool. And I mentioned Harryhausen because obviously like one of his battle scenes with a horde of skeletons just looked so that. So I mentioned Clash of the Titans. He lit right up. So they're still out there. The people that, created the foundations for modern fantasy art and movie making. I don't remember Moonglooms. We saw so many artists that day. And although it was really cool, it wasn't something that I wanted in my house, so I didn't make a note of his name. Oh, hello, little bird. This bird definitely lives like around our house. Just it's a big, actually it's not, it looks like it's a big brown bird. I'm not sure what it is. I probably should look up a bird ID guide and find out what it is, because he or she is always hopping around our patio. I was thinking about putting out a bird bath. So I doubled down on my red, but I shrank it a bit. You can see now it only takes up what, about a third of the pectoral muscle. So that's going to preserve a lot of dark, as you can see. So the more dark you want your skin tone to stay, the more dark you have to keep on each little section. And the smaller your highlight needs to become. Thanks, Brigala. My throat has been like getting like sore with allergy stuff lately. So I'm drinking a lot this stream. That's why I wanted my tea this morning. Well, there's always the VOD, Brigala. Always the VOD. So yeah, this is the answer to every color problem you've ever had where your white turns into gray, your black turns into gray, your red turns into orange. All these things are all caused by the size of your highlights and shadows versus what you're adding on, your midtone. What you're adding on to, rather. So when you look at the model and you want a particular skin color, you've got to make sure that your size of your highlights and your shadows reflect that. As your highlights get bigger, the entire color will shift. So if I want the skin tone to stay very dark, I need to limit my highlight to only about 1/3 of the area, and every additional highlight gets even smaller. Oh, interesting, Kariniko. That's good. Thanks. See, when I was a kid, I saw Clash of Titans, but when I saw the Dragon's Quest computer game, that was what got me excited. The idea of the possibility of what computer animation could do for movies and video games. And it has exceeded expectations ever since then. Games like Skyrim or Witcher 3, right? It is that one. Or was it 2? I don't remember. The latest one. Like, that level of detail and environments was a pipe dream, right? There's nobody who, saw early computer games could have predicted, like, how far we could come. I just love the immersive worlds. The possibilities of the immersive worlds there. So bringing that back there. Yeah, it's kind of sad, Turgeon. Somebody should start one. They probably would just need a volunteer to run a competition. I already have signed prints from Larry Elmore, so I'm good. Plus, it's like in Wisconsin, and I'm allergic to the entire state of Wisconsin, and I know that because I grew up there. Witcher 3. Yeah, that's what I thought. But then I second guessed myself because I wasn't familiar with the first two. I only really found Witcher with the last one. So remember, on the top, we're going to do a lot more of this highlight. It's going to take up a lot of area. Because that's where the light is most intense. But we're not looking at the model from the top. We're looking at it from the front and the back. Right? Very few of us just do a top-down on a model, unless there's something specific that our attention is being drawn to or a detail we want to see better. Yeah, it's a shame. Cyberpunk was so high potential. But it happens. So now when we're getting to these little tiny areas like the hand, that's when we have to be really careful. Because it's so easy to just paint over the entire surface. But we need just enough highlight to bring out details. And you want to focus it near the tops of things, because that's where the light is coming from. unless you set out to make it come from a different direction, and then you had better make it consistent across the entire model. Just little touches of color. And those, look at how that makes the segments of the fingers stand out. Just little touches, though. Not a lot. Tiny highlights, folks. If you want all this to stand out like that. Those are the paints we are using so far. Yeah, I was actually surprised the other day because I had taken my Elmore paintings out so that I could, or prints I should say, out so that I could hang them, at least one of them here in the office. And David actually liked them, which first surprised the heck out of me because I wouldn't have thought he would have liked Elmore, but he really liked the expert set cover. I prefer the companion set cover. And that's the one that Larry signed to me, personalized to me, so. When I was little, I loved that green dragon and that paladin. And the whole way the whole painting kind of tilts to make it feel dynamic. There we go. Got some more details. Remember, see, everywhere we put that red, we get more detail coming out of that dark skin tone. Now, I'm not going to mind so much if I lose some of my darks around the face. I do want to still keep, because when you get into very small detail areas, you have to oversimplify. So if I'm going to end up with this 5-color progression here, because I'm going to add an orange and maybe even a yellow on top of these 3 colors, if I'm going to do that, I need to very much simplify. So I'm probably going to lose a lot of my auburn shadow on the face. I'm going to keep my ebony so that I can keep those details, like the crease between his brows. Yeah, Ruth has a booth. She at least sells. Thought she sold at Bristol, and I thought I saw. Maybe I didn't see her, but I thought I saw her or somebody similar at the Texas Scarborough. But I had some prints from Ruth once upon a time. I think they all got damaged and lost in moving because this is the kind of thing I bought when I was younger and I never framed anything. So now I want to get these Elmores in frames so they don't get damaged. Yeah, I always liked Larry's dragons too. Except for a couple. There are a couple that are a little too humanoid featured for me. Like the basic set dragon, I was never a huge fan, even though I used to have the puddle or the puzzle. But otherwise, I'll agree. I like his dragons. And when I used to draw dragons as a kid, I would try to draw them like Larry. They just looked like what dragons should look like according to little me. So I'm going to try to keep that crease between the brows and try to keep up and bring up the surrounding areas. Again, this is such a small area. You must simplify, and you usually are going to have to build up a layer of highlights because over the broader surfaces, you want it to blend, right? You want to get this beautiful fade. But when you get up onto the face, you don't have enough room to do that. And so then you really want to kind of just build up enough that you get the color, you get the pop of color you want, like right there on top of the brow or here on the end of the nose. So that the details, you want those details to stand out. You want the color to read correctly compared to other areas of the figure. Alrighty, that's coming along. Let's get that lower lip. I'm probably in lighter skin tones, I would introduce reddish color to a lower lip, but that can be problematic when you're dealing with a model with a beard because it can read weird. When you're trying to identify the face, sometimes I'll leave the lower lip the same color, skin tone color, roughly as the rest of the face. For that reason, when the model has a beard, because the lower lip, as long as it's flesh colored, is going to be defined by that beard around it, and then you're going to be able to tie it to the rest of the face visually a little bit better. Yeah, that's the problem with metal dragons. I wish Jim would do, be cool if he worked with Reaper to do them in, like, bones, but I don't know how feasible that would be. That's what Reaper did, is turned all their dragons into bones eventually. But I suspect that he sells a lot more adventurers than he does monsters, so... As far as Dark Sword's focus, it's nice that they have the dragons. But then Jim is also like pretty old school like miniatures, so like I know he probably loves the metal. And so that would be another reason not to do that. There we are, got that color coming in. Need to get a little bit more over here. Again, when you're dealing with small areas, sometimes you have to put on a couple of layers of your highlight color to make sure that it builds up to the point where you really can see it. So the smaller the highlight, the less it shows up. And we are at 11, but I'm going to go 10 minutes over because I started 10 minutes late. Today is Patreon day for Anne. And actually, I mentioned it a couple times. I didn't catch if we had a link in the chat. But hey guys, I have a Patreon and it's cool and it's got a crap ton of content on it now because we've been doing it for almost 3 years. And I should really do a cool thing for my anniversary. Maybe I'll do that special offer. But anyway, it's patreon.com/paintingbig. Same as my Twitch handle is twitch.tv/paintingbig. because I like to paint big things. And also because painting big is like thinking big. And I like to think big too. So yeah, go on over, check it out. I've got some free stuff. And my lowest tier is very economically priced at only $2 a month. Been trying to do some more kind of basic stuff with my $2 tier. My $5 tier is very much about colors and choosing highlights and shadows for them. It's about working with various colors in MSP. And then my $10 one, I go a little bit more high-end as far as what we work on. Though there's still some good foundational stuff in there. And then there's the paint-along tier, which actually we should be getting perilously close to choosing a new model for that soon. There we go. All right. That's the last layer of highlight I'm going to put on the underside of anything, is this red. The orange and the yellow will definitely not be put on the underside of the hand or the underside of the arm. Thank you for the link, Quindy. There we go, a little bit more red, build it up. And at various points, you want to do a step back and look. You want to question, okay, have I lost my darks? Is this still the color I want to do? Or have I gotten too light? Or have I stayed too dark? And now, when you're dealing with a color that's essentially around a mid-tone, now is the time to adjust that. So I'll look at him and kind of see, does he still look like he has a really dark skin tone? Yeah, he does. Like the highlights look like the light is picking up the red tones in his skin. He maybe's gone a little bit brighter than I wanted. So if you get there, if you're like, oh, well, maybe he's just a little bit too bright, then you can stop and do a glaze with one of your dark colors. Be aware that if you've gone up to orange or something like that, don't do this one, because there's so much black in ebony flesh that your orange has a chance to go green depending on how yellow it is. Color interactions. But I could do either of these if I wanted to change the look of this dude at this point. If it were my choice, if I wanted to drop down my highlight a little bit, I would probably choose the auburn shadow. So I would do a little bit of that in a new well. A little bit. And then drop a big drop of water in it. And then drop another drop of water in it. Till it really is like colored water. That's even maybe a little strong, but we can work with that. And then if I decided I wanted this area to be less red, I could take that mix and paint it across the areas that I feel are too red. And you can do glazing two ways, and this is one way to do it, where you just take a tiny bit of the glaze on your brush and you just completely cover each area with a very thin layer of paint. So that's taken our red closer to brown. It's given it some more richness. It's knocked it down just a little bit. Kind of like it, so I'm going to do it everywhere. The other way to do a glaze is to take a huge bunch of it, blob it over everything, and then slurp off the excess. But when you have a model like this, where you've got essentially very defined muscle areas, and essentially a dark line for you to glaze up to, then you can do what I'm doing here and just slowly paint each little separate area over with glaze. And it works fine. it can also, glazes, the other thing to do other than shift color with glazes is that they smooth out your layering. So if you have any rough spots, this is going to help to smooth it out. There. Look at how intense that looks now. That red-brown, that auburn color, really, we lost a little bit of the highlight. That's what's going to happen when you glaze with a mid-tone dark or a dark. But we intensified. The color, I feel, is very rich now. I like it a lot. So that worked. And then probably next time we'll do the Cavalier Orange and take it up to that. And that will cover up some of the red that's left, and it will raise up your highlight level another notch so that you can see even more details. And it'll accomplish two things. Highlighting with orange is going to accomplish two things. One, will make the details pop out better. Our orange highlight will be very small. Two, it will cover up a fair bit of the red, probably half the red. And that will change the color of the piece, because when you're highlighting with a different color than you started with, in this case we've gone from really dark brown to red brown to red to a muted red orange, and when you add actual orange in, it's going to change the look and the color of the skin tone overall. So this will be a good way to kind of show that shift. But yeah, so what we accomplished today is we created a new Hellborn or Tiefling skin triad, a devilish skin triad, using some unconventional colors. We're only going to use a actual skin color for this one as the shadow start base coat. And then we did some mixing, and we are going up like this, which may feel like an odd skin tone, but it is working. And so we will continue. And this just proves that this is why I like to introduce or start with or base or mix in human skin tones to humanoid monsters. It gives you a base that makes sense, or a highlight that makes sense, or, something that is more natural of a skin tone. And that can help make your monsters look like they could actually exist in the real world and less like a cartoon. And boy, my throat is like really sore now after talking. So I'm glad that we have come to the end of the stream. To remind y'all what they posted earlier, Crow's Nest is not on today. So if you want your Crow's Nest fix, you should go to our YouTube and watch an old episode that you may not have seen before. Oh, geez. Those xenomorphs. They're going to get you. You sure you can't just assemble 5 and keep reusing them? Thanks for that, YouTube. Link Quindy. You can also see all of the past streams of this show, Reaper Pro Tips, on there. There are a mega crap ton. So, yeah. Tomorrow's model, we are going to finish Ms. Fungal Queen. I want to adjust the glowing mushrooms here. I want to bring in some highlights and shadows on the coral bits here. I want to work a little bit up here on the blue on more shading and highlighting of it. And then she will be finished. Finished. Yes, and then we will start the bust, guys. The bust takes over her spot. Hey, you bet, Quindy. Thanks, everybody. I hope you had a great day. And hey, we're almost to the middle of the week. So fantastic, right? Have a good one, everyone. And yeah, I'll see you tomorrow morning. Bye-bye.